You're the man.
Well, I think let's go over here and let's see if we got people at Bryan Farm.
You can come up here, though.
It doesn't really matter. We can
figure it
start
out
here.
pretty quick.
Y'all haven't seen this? Y'all haven't seen this young kid? You know where he's supposed to be the star attraction. I can't find him. You can get you a V8. I meant the vegetables. Right? Oh, Messiah, what's going on?
Nothing much. Couple of days, y'all got a bit.
And if I couldn't move faster than that, I'd probably just hold it wide open. That's all you can do. You damn right.
That's you.
Well, y'all see the Bryan Farm down there? You see that guy sitting down there? I don't even know who it is. Sitting in that chair doing nothing?
No.
That's the job for me. We wouldn't want him to have to get up.
Thanks.
I was in a, when I first started in the Park Service at Petersburg, I don't know his name, it was very similar to mine. He was, way back in the day at Five Forks Battlefield, which is a subset of Petersburg, really cool battlefield in Dinwiddie County. They had a service station, old service station that was serving as the visitor center, like a cinder block house, what it was, at Five Forks, 5 roads, you know. So anyway, nobody came to Five Forks. I mean, you wanted the ultimate Park Service job. If you don't want to, like, you know, if you want to count tumbleweeds going by, you know, kind of opposite of Gettysburg, but anyway, nobody come by, and there was nothing to do. I mean, you know, this is before you could get on and stream movies and all that stuff. I mean, you actually had to, you know, something called a book. You know, that's what you're gonna be doing out there. But yeah, he had this guy. He was used to. Old trick was you'd lock the front door, see, and you could, you know, close your eyes a little bit while you're in there. I don't work out there that much, but anyway, this guy, co-worker of mine, he forgot to lock the door, and he said he was kicked back. He had his feet up on top of the desk. He said he came to. And there was a visitor over in the exhibit. It's only one room, you know. He's just standing over there looking at the exhibits, you know. The guy said, he says, I stood up, Matt. I tucked my shirt in and everything. I said to him, I said, sir, can I help you? He goes, no, didn't want to bother you. Yeah. Well, that don't happen here. Yeah. People that, somebody asked me the difference between, park ranger asked me this past spring about the difference between Gettysburg and other parks. I said, probably your biggest difference will be as a park ranger is you're not getting out of that program. You know, I don't know what the fail, you know, no-shows are at an average park, you know. A real park is what I mean. Not bragging. I mean the real Park Service. But here at Gettysburg, you're going to do it. If it's advertised, you're going to have somebody show up. I mean, so, yeah. That's the big difference. Another big difference is... here, as far as the Park Ranger series was designed, you can actually be, hey Jack, you can actually be you actually fulfill it. Like, I'm pretty much talk full time. as you can tell by my voice, right? So I'm hoarse. I talk full time. Rarely in the Park Service do you get that opportunity. You go to a real park and they have like a lot of collateral duties. Like they've got to go do fees, for example, or run the cash register, you know, at the bookstore. They got to be both, you know. They got a lot of collateral duties. Some of them are even museum curators, you know. They have a small I mean, just stuff you would never think. So I'm truly blessed. Gettysburg's a nice place to work. I'm spoiled in that manner. Spoiled. Can y'all say that? Well, I'm killing time. I was waiting on my protege to show because I didn't plan on carrying the load here, but we'll see what he's doing. Surely that ain't him coming there, is it? By God, if I was making my big debut, I wouldn't be 3 minutes late. I tell you what, Angie, I tell you, she had one guide candidate come up. I tell y'all getting ready. Y'all been asking me about the licensed battlefield guide. I'll tell y'all something right now. She had one guide candidate come in and show up 5 minutes late. They didn't even leave the building. They didn't even leave. They didn't get that far. Yeah. There's your tip for the day. Okay. Well, you know these youngsters.
Yeah, it's a different time, isn't it?
Yeah. He's pretty bright, though. I think you're going to like him. He's got a lot of enthusiasm.
Maybe he was at auto shop.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you how it comes full circle, y'all. Has anybody got a list of the upcoming battle walks on them, by the way? Do you? What we got here? All right, so we've got Tom tomorrow. No, ma'am, I can see it. We've got a typo. I don't know. July 16th is stuck in there. I don't know what they mean by that. This is why I'm looking. Okay, so what is today, ladies and gentlemen?
20th.
July 20th. Rough night, huh?
I'm living in the past.
I like to be a day behind myself. So do others. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, I want to throw something out to y'all, okay? But this is going to be dated information very quickly, so do not show up here. This is 2024, all right? Do not come here at 2030 and expect me to look the same way, okay? I'm not. All right. Okay, I'm gonna point out something to y'all that I think a program that y'all want to put on your calendar if you want to pull it out. Troy is doing a battle walk on the Union defense of Cemetery Hill, which is starting in the National Cemetery parking lot at Stop 16 on August 17th, 2024. All right? You'll want to be at that if you can make it. Right? You understand? You probably want to write that down because I'm not going to repeat that. August 17th, you need to be at Stop 16 at 10 o'clock. Right?
Yep.
So that means Martin Sheen's going to be there?
Maybe Jeff Dan.
I think all you hardcore Gettysburg people that have been with us for a long time ought to be there August 17th. All right. So, without further introduction, I'm only 6 minutes starting this thing. Why don't we, can I get everybody to, how do I want to have y'all positioned? Why don't I switch and go down here? I want to get everybody off the roads, what I'm trying to do. Just go ahead and why don't I go over here and we'll just turn just a little bit. I got more people than I expected. You know, Manson used to stand on a rock too. Just saying, historical fact. Makes me look taller too. Makes my nose itch just to look at you. Mm-hmm. Oh, where'd he go now? He keeps disappearing on me. There he is. There he is. We got bird dog circle around. My dad said good bird dog always circles. Come back around. He likes that right here. All right. So, what we're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, is Winfield Scott Hancock, who is one of my favorite generals. The 2nd Corps commander. Quick rehash before we get into Hancock. We're going to be basically talking about the man himself. So I'm not out here to do like at the angle to show you where we are on the camera. I'm sorry. Here at the angle. I'm not out here to do a tactical study for you. I mean, we're not doing Pickett's charge. We're doing Pickett's charge, we're not doing Pickett's charge. We're going to talk about Hancock and what he does and what he brings to the table on July 3rd of 1863. But as far as moving the units back and forth, it's not, you well know we could do the whole tour on that, okay? But it's Winfield Scott Hancock is one of if not one of my favorite Union generals. It's just something about him. He has, I guess what you would call, I hope I'm using this correctly, I guess he has what is called moxie or something like that, or he has, in other words, let's more loosely define it as it. Whatever it is, he's got it, all right? He's just a natural born leader of men. He looks like a leader, right? I mean, if you didn't know Winfield Scott Hancock and he walked up to you in a room, you'd know you were dealing with somebody. All right, you may not know what he does or who he is, but you know that you're looking at somebody that just exudes, to me, self-confidence. He's just a general. He looks like a general. He acts like a general. And in the midst of fighting, he is fearless, just like you imagine your generals to be throughout history. He's it. Okay? So that's who we're out here, because I just find him a fascinating character. And I hope you do too today. All right. Big picture before we get back to Hancock. I know there's got to be, probably, I don't know, a few of you that don't know what the heck I'm talking about with Winfield Scott Hancock. So I'm going to do big picture to get down to Hancock to show you where he's at. All right. So rehash. The Union Army, that pie, if it's an army, is made out of 7 cores. That's 7 slices of that pie. Those are cores. Hancock controls one of those cores, one of the 7 corps that is under General George Meade. Now, within that corps, he has 3 divisions. All right? He has Hayes, Gibbon, and Caldwell. All right? 3 divisions. I don't know if I got them in order, 1, 2, 3. I'll ask him in a minute. But he's got 3 divisions. So Hancock comes on this field. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but he comes on this field. He probably has 8,000, 8,000 men in the 2nd Corps right here. All right, we'll get back to that. We'll get into the battle and set all that up in a minute. But Hancock comes onto the field, and he is already in a battered condition on July 3rd. Out of the 3 divisions which are in his corps, you Gettysburg buffs will know that 1 division had to be dispatched all the way down to the wheat field, or they ended up in the wheat field, where they did heavy fighting down through there. You already know that Willard's New York Brigade was also dispatched on July 2nd, and it headed south, and it got beat up. So there have been significant subtractions from Hancock's 2nd Corps already on the 2nd day of the battle. And to put you in the context, we'll revisit all this in the timeline that it happens. At the end of July 2nd, Hancock is placed in charge or excuse me, relieved of 2nd Corps Command and placed in charge of 3rd Corps Command. In other words, for you Gettysburg buffs that don't know the numbers but know the names, George Meade ordered Hancock to relinquish command of a perfectly good corps to go out here and take command of this mob that was falling back that used to be under the command of Dan Sickles. Ah. Now what do you think Hancock said when that got to headquarters right here? He did it though. Professional military officer. We're about to get into that. But that's the scene on July 3rd. Hancock is still in charge of this 3rd Corps, not the 2nd Corps, which places John Gibbons. Now, who is this man that Matt felt it was important enough to come out here and do a complete battle walk on for July 3rd? All right. To tell us the background of that, we have, without further ado, all right, you want to come on up? The problem with the Ford Bronco was always the transmission. I've been meaning to tell you that ever since I saw it. They're great vehicles and they're fun to drive, but the transmissions will not hold up on them. I'm just going to go ahead and save you a lot of money before you drop it, because I knew a lot of kids about your age, when I was your age, that had to have Ford Bronco, but they dropped a lot of money on it. I'm just trying to save you right now. All right.
I was thinking, what the heck are you talking about a Ford Bronco? And I forgot her shirt.
Hancock drove it. It's okay.
Yeah, Hancock liked Ford Bronco.
I
Okay.
think he was more of a Jeep man personally.
Jeep man. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you, what an introduction. Christopher Busby, ladies and gentlemen. How about it? There you go. As you can see, his debut on camera is not shy. I think he'll do quite fine. He's already waving to the crowd right here.
You know this isn't my debut.
Yes, go ahead and tell him about your debut, because this is going to give you 6 steps from Kevin Bacon right here. You got to hear this story.
So in 2018, 2019, I went on Matt's battle walk for Armistead's brigade. I'm on Stuff Riders video.
Mm-hmm.
After that moment, I kind of fell in love with this entire thing, and now I go to college here at Gettysburg, and of course now I'm here giving programs to you all. So without this man right here, I probably wouldn't have done this. So
Well, I wasn't going for that. Oh, how about that? That's pretty cool, though, isn't it? I want y'all to know, going back to August 17, 2024, that you know, it's coming full circle. Christopher and I were yesterday, basically briefly going over today talking points. And I had to note the difference, you know, the enthusiasm. I mean, he's getting into Hancock and everything, and he turned back around and he left. And I looked down on the desk, and somebody, a well-meaning person, had dropped off a retirement guide for me in the federal government. And I looked at it, and I looked at his Hancock material, and I looked at mine, and I said, "What a dichotomy! What a long, strange trip it's been." Okay, so yeah, when I got here in 1999. I was a park guy, which means nothing to y'all, but I'm an entry-level park ranger. And I'm here, and I'm among these people, Eric Campbell, you know, Tom, Carlton, Troy, all of them there. And, you know, I'm just like walking among giants here. I had no idea this was what Gettysburg was, or was about, you know. And if you go back on the Pennsylvania Cable Network, I don't know what date it was either 99 or 2000. You can go back and if you see it, you'll know it, because I have hair back then. All right? Yeah, you can watch my hair come off if you watch the videos in chronological order. But Troy Harmon gave me a chance. Right, he came out there. It was called Early's Division. I forget what that was called. Early's Division, or excuse me, Barlow's Knoll, or something like that. Troy came out and gave me that opportunity. In other words, he shared the stage. He let me share the stage with him. And this is what, I don't know if this is the moment for him, but I've never forgotten that opportunity that Troy gave me that day. And, you know, and what a shot he gave me, you know, and at that big time stage. And so when I see somebody younger, reminds me of myself, waves at the camera, right? He waves at the camera a lot. Why not? You know? And so I'm hoping that you enjoy this as much as I think that I am, because the enthusiasm is unbounded here, just like I was in 1999. In other words, I feel old. I'm telling you, I just feel old right now. Like they gave me my 25-year certificate. And the meat market guy asked me how my grandchildren were. Oh, hell no. Yeah. All right. So how about, let me get this motorcycle gang past us.
Can you cool with that?
Oh yeah, that's rough and tumble right there. I wouldn't mess with those dudes. Transmission. Guaranteed. Especially on the orange ones. All right, who was Winfield Scott Hancock? To give you the background on, we're going to turn it over to Christopher in order to give you the background on Mr. Hancock. Now pay attention to the pedigree of this gentleman as he goes.
So before I get started, I do have to shout out one person who will be watching from home today. That'll be my father. He couldn't be here, unfortunately, right now, but he is going to be watching the video. So hi, Dad. I finally made it. To add on to kind of what Matt was illustrating in the beginning, this is a quote from a soldier in the 140th Pennsylvania when he's writing home. Hancock is the best fighting man in this army. He fights to whip and isn't afraid of anything. So that kind of gives you an idea of who Hancock is. And so when we bring him here to Gettysburg, on the entire day of June 30th, him and his 2nd Corps are going to be in Uniontown, Maryland. They're going to march up to Taneytown on the morning of July 1st. At 11 a.m., Hancock will arrive there with Meade present. He's going to walk up to the commanding general, and he's going to report that the 2nd Corps has arrived, and he's going to go over their condition. It's at this point Meade and Hancock, who knew each other from the pre-war army, are going to have a little bit of a conference. At this point, Hancock is the only person to actually know what is going on in Meade's head. And therefore, he's the only commander who's aware of the Pipe Creek Circular and what that means. And so it's here when he leaves his headquarters at about 1 o'clock, goes back to the 2nd Corps headquarters to finally lounge around. Meade and Butterfield walk into his tent. When they walk into his tent, he is given direct orders to go up to Gettysburg. When he goes up here, he has no idea what he's getting into. But when he gets up here, his orders are to come up to the field and to advise the commanding general on what to do. George Meade is getting conflicting reports. Reynolds is dead. Many men are sending back reports that the Union is being broken here and that the Confederates have taken the town. Other reports say that they're holding strong, but Meade has a critical decision to make. Is he going to pull this army back to that Pipe Creek line, or is he going to bring the army forward here to Gettysburg? And so he picks Hancock, someone who's very competent in his field, a division commander for a while, and now newly the 2nd Corps commander. Probably the most junior corps commander in the Army of the Potomac. Hancock accurately points out to Meade that there are three generals here who outrank him: Howard, Slocum, and Sickles. Howard is, of course, in command of the left wing here. That's the 1st and 11th Corps. Sickles is coming down this road right here, the Emmitsburg Road. And Slocum is with the 12th Corps coming towards Culp's Hill. He voices these complaints, and Meade finally says that I have been given permission by Edwin Stanton to put any commander in any place that I feel is necessary. And with that, he turns over to command to Gibbon, who I should also note is also the most junior division commander in the 2nd Corps. So you have two people who are superseding their superiors. But it's here Hancock's going to take off from Uniontown. He's going to go into an ambulance, and he's going to look over the maps of this terrain here. When he arrives between 3:30 and 4:30, accounts differ, he's going to arrive on the Taneytown Road. He sends Major Mitchell ahead of him to inform General Howard of his coming up. When Hancock arrives here, what happens is pretty unanimously kind of agreed upon. When Hancock comes here, this is a quote from Carl Schurz, a division commander in the 11th Corps, as the 11th Corps is streaming back out of town. As the 1st Corps is trying to reform, he says, Hancock's presence gave new inspiration to the troops. They all knew him by fame. His stalwart figure and his soldierly bearing seemed to verify all the things that fame had told them about. His mere presence was a reinforcement, and everybody on the field felt stronger for him being there. Quickly, he's going to organize that Union defense on Cemetery Hill. He's going to notice this terrain here, the terrain that we are standing on right now. His first thing is he's going to send Stevens' battery onto what we now know as Stevens Knoll. He's now protecting Culp's Hill. He's going to deploy an element of Wadsworth's division to take Culp's Hill, and he's going to send Geary down to Little Round Top to hold that. He is occupying this position. He's setting up the army here. Another man, Francis Wigan of the 16th Maine, said when the shattered forces of the 1st Corps reached the ridge, that would be Cemetery Hill, one of the first things we saw was the magnificent form of General Hancock. He was surrounded by his staff, busy issuing orders. He had quickly grasped the situation and had gotten matters so well in hand that if the Confederates tried to attack, they certainly would have received a very warm reception. He's doing all of this in just about an hour. It's at that point, when the Confederates do not attack, that he has formed this line here. He's going to give command over to Slocum, and it's at that point he will go back to Taneytown, where he is going to tell George Meade that this is the place to fight the battle here. And it's at that point that Meade sends all of the orders out to the armies to bring them up, or to all the corps to bring them here. And so, with that, is there anything else you'd like me to add?
Just to reiterate his point, who does George Meade send? That's all you need to know. Right in the end, he's got a lot of generals. Who's he send? He sends Hancock. All right. What showed you? Did you talk about Howard when he shows up and Howard doesn't like it?
Yeah. So there's a bit of a controversy that forms, right? Howard, Howard, Mr. One Arm himself, he's going to not be very happy that a junior officer is taking his position. Now, there is one piece of evidence which has not been verified that I will throw out, which is Meade apparently got an order or a letter from Buford saying there seems to be no commander up here, send up Hancock. We do not know if this is an accurate piece of kind of correspondence. We have no evidence that it exists, but it has circulated through some of the staff officers present. And so that just kind of gives you this idea of what's going on. We do know Buford did send letters to Pleasanton saying that there seems to be no commander up here, we need more reinforcements. But when Howard is here, his point of view is everything's under control. He's left that division on Cemetery Hill. It's normal for Union troops to be running through town screaming, apparently. But that's not my take. But anyway, but Howard and Hancock never really agree on what happened. Hancock would write that when he approached Howard, they had an agreement that Hancock would take over command of the field. Howard violently protested this through letters written in the post-war years, in which he said that they had this agreement never existed at all, and Hancock knew his place was under my command. So I'll leave it to the audience to decide which side you believe. Hancock had an order in his pocket from George Meade saying that he commands this battlefield and he is going to advise the general on what to do. Howard had no such order. He wasn't even aware of this order being given out in the first place. And so when the troops are reforming here, we can't pinpoint it on the one man, Hancock or Howard, but we do know that Hancock's presence here had much more of a reinforcing feeling to the Union troops who had just fought so doggedly north and west of here, that they were re-energized by Hancock's presence. They finally felt that someone was going to fight this battle and try and beat the Confederates. I don't think Howard had any of that confidence from his men in the 11th Corps, and certainly not from men in the 1st Corps. So
I just threw him that curveball unplanned. You see, how about that? I didn't even know what he was, you know. That was quiet. Yeah, I like it. No us. All right, so why don't we, I like to move people, so why don't we move? Can we get a better day? I mean, it's overcast and everything. We're not going far. We're just not a hard hike. That's why I did this one this time of year, because I thought it'd be super smoking hot and we could get through with it, and it's turned out to be, you know, like a perfect day. So, why don't we do this? Let's just walk on over here by the copse of trees somewhere and we'll just reassess. All right. We'll get it together. Like a garage band. And a 1, and a 2, and a 3. Told you he was good.
A different bike week.
Different bike week. Yeah, I don't know. This must be 50cc week. I don't know. This is called don't pull up in front of the bar on that or I'm going to get my tail beat week.
Yeah, that right.
Probably won't even let you get off the bike before they start beating on you. You got sunscreen all over. All right, so let's talk about Hancock when he comes up on July 2nd. It's not the focus of it, but you should get a flavor of it to what he's up. Now, I touched briefly over here about how beat up the 2nd Corps was from the second day's fight. So how were they positioned leading into July 3rd? Well, originally on July 2nd, most of you can look through the copse of trees. It doesn't really matter. But off to the south, obviously south end of Cemetery Ridge, the Pennsylvania Monument's off in that direction, etc. That is actually the area, the Pennsylvania Monument, etc., is the area of Caldwell's division. I mean, I always use that as a reference point for Sickles, but technically it's probably Caldwell's division, and Sickles would have been a little bit further south of there. I'm just throwing that out there for you Gettysburg buffs that measure it by the inch, okay? All right, but yeah, so Caldwell's division, as I said earlier, is detached to the wheat field, and it marches there. So that leaves a gap in the line from basically the Pennsylvania Monument almost up to where we are here at the copse of trees. Now, that, of course, Caldwell's division is in place until, and of course it subsequently has to move as a result of Dan Sickles deciding to go out here. Is the reason I parked you out here, to where you see that white and red buildings out there. That red barn to your left is the furthest left, I should say, is the Sherpy farm. And if you look to the left of the Sherpy farm, you got good eyes. You see bushes on top of that. Well, that's the peach orchard over there. And those are bushes in the distance, not trees. Okay? When you can't tell something and it looks green in the south, it's a bush. Okay. All right, so that's where Sickles is going to move his line out to. So what I'm simply trying to point out to you is the age-old point is Sickles leaves a gap in the Union line. So when the Confederates subsequently attack, which is not the focus of here, but it does get it to be the focus of ours, Longstreet drives off Sickles' command. You got thousands of 3rd Corps troops falling back from the Emmitsburg Road, from those buildings that I just pointed out to you, and it has gone to shambles. What's left here is a huge gap in the fishhook, because Caldwell's, to reiterate, Caldwell's division has already gone to the wheat field. So Hancock, with the 2nd Corps holding the upper end of Cemetery Ridge, has already lost 1/3 of his corps. And if you count Willard's, you know, I mean, that's another percent. So anyway, there's a big hole. That's what Hancock rides into on July 2nd. When you drive your car along Hancock Avenue, it's a reason it's called Hancock Avenue. All right, because, and it goes for so long. You just want me to say it again, don't you, back here? Just Hancock. Let's just say it. All right. All that line, or excuse me, that tour road right there, along that line is where Hancock physically would have been. That's how you get to the point, ladies and gentlemen, that Hancock orders the 1st Minnesota, 262 men, 8 companies from the 1st Minnesota, to charge ahead and suffer 82% casualties in 15 minutes. What does Hancock do? He tells them to go charge. What is he trying to do? Buy time, because there's a hole in his line. All right, they charge ahead. Let me tell you something about Hancock too. Give you a measure of the man. He attends a reunion with the 1st Minnesota members. You know what he gets up there and tells those old men? He told them in front of them, in their face, that if he had to do it all over again, he would. Now there's a measure. You know, he's playing. Yeah. So anyway, he's whipping things into shape down there. He's got Willard's brigade that he's sending in. They stave off the Confederates. Barksdale, Wilcox, Lang, right down here by the Cadore barn, etc. Okay, that night, Hancock attends the War Council at the Leicester House. Now, for those of you that don't know about this, I could do the whole program on the War Council, but we're not going to do that. If you got a major general, literally and figuratively, that you like in the Union Army, they were in that house behind Cemetery Ridge on the night of July 2nd. They're all in that bedroom. If you get a gander, we're actually having them open this summer, 2024. I'll be coming up the desk in 2036, but that ranger said that y'all had this thing open. Try to imagine 12 people in that bedroom. Wow. I've seen trailer bedrooms bigger. And I've stayed in the trailer with the bottom falling out. I bet old Christopher had never stayed in the trailer with the bottom falling out. See, he don't know about hard times. I'm talking about the window not closing. I'm talking about so cold the cat gets under the covers. Now that's cold. Y'all never experienced that. I have. Maybe you have, sir. I don't know. The only one not laughing. Hancock, ladies and gentlemen, is down there and he stays the Union line. I don't know at what point, if Meade was physically there or sent a staff officer, maybe it has nothing to do with it, but perhaps George Meade sees that Hancock is trying to secure the line, and it's a natural thing to send one of your best combat generals down there to secure everything up. Right? And so that's the reason I think he's placed in charge of the 3rd Corps. That's the situation, though, ladies and gentlemen, as the sun comes up on July 3rd. Through here. All right. As the sun comes up on July 3rd, Hancock is in the saddle again. Around 9 o'clock, he spoke with his commander, General George Meade, and before riding off, the commanding general stated his opinion that the main attack would occur again on the Union left. To Gibbon, the night before, Gibbon claimed that Meade said it would be in the center. In the early morning hours, ladies and gentlemen, the thing that drew Hancock's attention is, if you look out here, not much to look at. I'm going to tell you to look into a field. Have I ever told you to do that before on a program? Look into, over there in that field of corn. Yes. All right. Where you see those trees, let's start with big trees. Where you see the major tree line, that Seminary Ridge, and about halfway across that field in that dip would have been the Bliss Farm. Why would the Bliss Farm be in the dip? Well, because they didn't have a water pump. And you don't want to carry the water uphill for 40 years. So you put the house where the water is, not the water where the house is. Hello. Y'all didn't think of that. Anyway, Bliss Farm, Bliss Barn, Bliss House is still standing. And where you see that, I don't know, y'all can estimate distance better than I can. I would say it's closer to the Confederate lines than it is the Union lines. Slightly. Maybe 60-40, I don't know. Something like that. But it becomes no man's land. And it's the only thing out there. And it dominates it. And because it's kind of like the tractor factory at Stalingrad, it really has no meaning. But it has significant meaning. Because it's there, you know? And so they swap hands, and Hancock is involved in that tactical maneuvers. When you get to Bliss Farm fighting, you're talking about sending companies forward, you know, or 3 or 4 companies or something like that. You're not talking about wholesale corps command. But I mean, he's, you know, riding along Hayes Line, and, you know, they're going back and forth. It becomes a, I don't know, distraction, if you will. Anyway, the end result is that you'll never believe this. Union soldiers set the place on fire. Yeah, sure did. Sure did. No doubt about it. I don't make the stories here. All right. Hancock reportedly ordered the Bliss Farm burned. I don't think it's that horrible a thing. I mean, how many farms have they seen burn in Virginia? I'm not saying I'd like if they come up to Cashtown and burn my place. I've kind of got to come out and talk to Mr. Hancock about that. All right? Maybe get my money's worth as he set my house on fire. But, yeah, if you, thank you. You won't laugh at the other one, but you laugh at that one. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. But, I mean, it settles the problem, ladies and gentlemen. And then there's quiet. I'm not saying it's deadly quiet, but it's quiet for a battlefield. Occasional shot. Birds are chirping. Actually come back out. Union soldiers are lounging around this wall. This is the cool thing about preserving this land. Union soldiers are right here where you're standing. At 1:07 p.m., you know, they've been noticing all morning that the Confederates, not at one time, but the Confederates in little dribbles from the Peach Orchard all the way down to the Virginia Memorial have been rolling up artillery pieces intermittently. It's interesting, but you know, after a while you can see them all. And when you can see them all, you happen to notice something. They happen to notice something. They're all pointed here. This might be your sign, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, it's all quiet until 1:07 p.m. At the Peach Orchard over there, the Washington artillery is ordered to fire 2 shots in rapid succession. Boom! You could have seen the white smoke come off from over there around that White House, the Sherpy farm. You would have seen the white smoke, and you would have soon heard the shriek of that shell as it comes over Cemetery Ridge. I don't know exactly where it went, but it came in this general direction. Second shot. Misfire. Reprime. Now there's something you Gettysburg trivia people didn't know. Woo! You had to reprime the piece. So there was a boom and then a
Silence.
boom. Okay? But when that happens, 147 guns open up. Now I was reading Earl Hess a little bit before I came out of here. He said 135. I hate to call the man out. It's 147. Scott Hartwick told me it's 147. And so it's 147. If there's ever any doubt, it's 147. Okay? Because I got it from the man himself. You get that, Christopher? 147. Write it down, bank on it. Let me pass it on to you. So that's the official number. 147 guns running from the Peach Orchard to the Virginia Memorial open up. About half of those. The other half, about 60 of those 147, they open up along Seminary Ridge. And they're all coming in here. Now, it's not the point to get into Pickett's charge. But the point is to set up the situation as we describe Hancock, Christopher and I describe Hancock coming down Cemetery Ridge here today. What is the situation? The situation is there's a lot of firepower being dumped on this ridge. The situation is that what you see here is what they had in 1863, which is nothing, okay? And Robert E. Lee can see that. They haven't entrenched. He can clearly see that. And I don't know, this is speculation, but many historians have said that he possibly saw a weak point within the Union line where you see that single tree right there. That is called the angle, and it juts out in front of the rest of the Union position. Either way, these guns have opened, and Robert E. Lee has arrayed 12,000 Confederate infantry to come across this field. Those 12,000 infantry, ladies and gentlemen, will almost go to the Sherpy farm behind that ridge over there, to the Virginia Memorial, and all the way down to your right as far as you can see on that tree line. 12,000 infantry are set to come forward against this position. Now, where you see the Virginia Memorial in front of you, to your left of the Virginia Memorial out there is Pickett's division. Out of 9 infantry divisions in the Confederate Army, 8 of those infantry divisions have been engaged. There's one left that has been unengaged, that has arrived upon the field the day before. 5,500 Virginians. George Pickett. He has 3 brigades within his division. If you're not following me, let me reiterate. Corps, division, brigade, regiment. Regiment, brigade, division, corps. Hancock, corps commander. Longstreet, Confederate side, corps commander. All right? Within that, ladies and gentlemen, Longstreet's corps is Pickett's division. George Pickett, the division commander, has 3 brigades with him. I'm working around a point back to Hancock. You just follow me here. Trust me. I'm going to get there. I think. He has, within Pickett's division, 3 brigades, which are, oh, you better know this, especially if you've taken that exam. You cannot become a licensed battlefield guide without knowing the 3 brigades of George Pickett's division. Go ahead there, Jim Palmer.
Armistead, Kemper, and Garnett.
Really? The Orioles fan? God. Thank you. And I'm a big Orioles fan. He beat the guy from Boston. Good God. Yes, Armistead, Garnett, and Kemper. Where am I going with this? Out of one of those brigade commanders, ladies and gentlemen, a gentleman named Lewis Armistead. Lewis Armistead has roughly around 25 years of prior military experience, U.S. Army experience before the Civil War. He also has many acquaintances and friends in the United States Army. And one of those acquaintances, ladies and gentlemen, and friends, portrayed in the movie Gettysburg, and a tour cannot be done without mentioning, is none other than, let's go with Jim Palmer again. Hancock. Hancock is one of his friends. Christopher, come up and tell us what happened about Hancock and Armistead.
Alrighty, well, I'm back, everyone. So, Hancock and Armistead first met in Mexico. Armistead was older than Hancock, but they were a mess tent. Their third mess mate was none other than Harry Heath. But when they get to California and Hancock is in the quartermaster, right before the war starts, they're going to throw a party. Them being Elmira Hancock, his wife, and Winfield himself. It's here you're going to have Albert Sidney Johnston, Richard Garnett, Lou Armistead, and George Pickett, along with Hancock and his family, all present here. Albert Sidney Johnston's wife is going to sing Mary of Argyle and Kathleen Marverine, or however you pronounce that.
Glad you could pronounce it.
And it's here that Armistead is going to take Hancock by the shoulders, and he is going to say, "You can never know what this has cost me. and I hope God will strike me dead if I am ever induced to leave my native soil should worst come to worst. And he would give Hancock his major's new uniform, which is brand new at the time. Hancock at this point is a captain in the quartermaster department. So maybe they was thinking of promotion, something like that. But in any case, he didn't really need it anymore now that he was joining the Confederacy. And so that is how Armistead is going to become friends with Hancock. And then, would you like me to go into the final bit, Matt?
Yeah, go
with them here? All right. So, of course,
actually, let's pause that for a minute. You talking about after the fighting?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's
leave them on the edge of the seat.
We're a garage band. That's it. All right. I just want to move on. Yes, you can cover that. Let's just move a spot though before we get. They're friends. Okay. Now the scene in the movie Gettysburg about Armistead weeping or whatever, Winnie over there. I forget what exactly. I haven't got that cheesy Gettysburg line down, but probably not true. Armistead is kind of like Hancock, or like all of them, really. Do you not see in your own Civil War studies, at least I do, and this is an unprofessional opinion based on no statistics, but do you not usually see the difference between, in your Civil War studies, a professional military officer's conduct and demeanor compared to a volunteer officer? I'm not saying it's always, 50-50 or whatever, but you can usually expect regular United States military officers, professional military officers, to behave in a professional military manner. I mean, they're squared away. And that's what I'm driving at. Hancock and Armistead hit me as the same type. So the scene from the movie where Armistead is being irrational is probably far-fetched. Armistead was probably so tired that he probably sleeping instead of worrying about whether Robert E. Lee was a monkey or whatever they were. Yeah. Any questions so far? All right, let's know. I want to show y'all something that you've seen 1,000 times, but you never saw it. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're pointing across the field right here. We're going to about face. Once again, this isn't about the tactics, it's about the people. We're going to go back across the streets, not very far. And let's find a gathering place over there. I'm going to show you something.
Talking in code too.
Yeah, but they're not doing this.
Well, it's not a mound visit, though.
Right.
You can get his hand.
Right. That was not a mound visit. You didn't have your hand over here.
Well, maybe they think we're stupid. So.
Stuff Riders decided to be nice today and not wear a Sherman shirt. And that's too bad because we have Grant here. Shake the camera up and down there. Hey, Stuff Rider, how was your trip to Rome? Good. Okay. All right. Armistead. Everybody has seen before, ladies and gentlemen, where Armistead was wounded, or the monument to Armistead's wounding right over here, mortal wounding, if you want to get technical, which is right by the copse of trees. Well, to save a stop or two, I didn't think it was really necessary for you to see that again. What happens in the aftermath of this is kind of confusing, and I don't really know if some of this is kind of people misremembering, or maybe they had somebody when they were an old man, they thought they helped somebody else that they didn't really help. They really did help somebody, but it wasn't who they thought they helped. I don't know, all kind of things. So the aftermath and the confusion of Pickett's charge is hard to ascertain. But keeping it on Armistead, as you well know, Armistead is going to be the last Confederate general standing along the Union position, and he's going to raise his hat on the tip of his sword and charge over the stone wall. He has failed at the monument or the marker, which is inside the copse of trees or the angle over there, and then subsequently the Confederate attack is repulsed. We'll come back to the Confederate attack in just a minute and back up. But as far as Armistead is concerned, he first had a staff officer come by him, a Weasley or somebody like that. And this is the part of the story I cannot figure out. This lieutenant walked away with the impression that he was General Armistead was General Longstreet. Yes. Now, I don't know why he would do that, and I'm not saying Armistead told him that, but he portrays Armistead as unconscious is what I'm driving at. So that's a bit of confusing news as far as the story I'm about to tell you. I'm just telling you the order of things. So they think they picked this guy up. They think they got General Longstreet. And at some point in the conversation over there's another officer that rides up and says, you need to be helping your own men. And these Union soldiers toting this guy are saying, no, we got General Longstreet. And the officer's, oh, okay. You go ahead and take him on. Whatever you want. At some point, members of the 72nd Pennsylvania, an unknown captain, and members of the 72nd Pennsylvania are going to receive word that there is a rebel soldier in the front out here. I don't know if this is before they put him on the stretcher. I don't know the exact timing of this. But at some point, they're going to come running back and report to the men that are just standing there. The fighting's over. That there is a rebel officer up ahead saying something strange about being the son of a widow. And they just said he's babbling. And instantly that unknown captain is going to spring forward with 2 or 3 men because they recognize what he's saying. And they will go to Armistead's side. They turn out to be Masons. All right? Now they picked, and the reason I brought you over here for this, because I thought on a nice day we could spend the extra time because we're really in no hurry. Nobody's sweating here, right here. They pick Armistead up. And where you go, and I recommend it if you haven't seen it, the Friend to Friend Monument, which is in the annex of the National Cemetery. I think it's one of our most underrated monuments. Most people don't know about it. But anyway, it depicts this scene, which I'm about to describe. They have him on the stretcher, and they're burying him down through here. And somewhere in here, on the backside of Cemetery Ridge, they are going to encounter one of General Winfield Scott Hancock's staff officers, and that's Captain Henry Bingham. Now, Christopher is going to tell you about the Bingham and Armistead encounter, which happens somewhere here in this vicinity. I thought you might want to look at the spot. You know, it's not marked out here today, but it's one of the more famous scenes from the Battle of Gettysburg. You might as well know where it took place in this. All right, go on.
So I guess to kind of prime the story, I should say that, you know, when Hancock, not to spoil anything, but he does go down with a wound, his staff officers are not really with him. They're kind of out issuing orders. And so when Bingham comes upon Armistead, Armistead apparently is going to give him his personal possessions. And so those are going to be a couple of different things. One thing it is not is his personal Bible. That was given to Elmira at that meeting I talked about earlier. In the movie they say, you know, there's a package for Elmira, but Bingham will take probably his watch, wallet, things like that. I think he even takes his pistol and his sword as well. Bingham would later claim that Armistead apologizes for the attack, but that statement is not really kind of based on anything. It's based on what Bingham says in a kind of post-war letter where things are kind of trying to come back together, and you know, everyone's trying to pump up their own people and say, well, this is, you know, I was with Hancock, and you know, Armistead didn't want to attack his best friend, but it happened anyway. I think going back to Matt's point that these were soldiers, I don't know how true that statement is, but
He may have
Bingham
been He may have been apologizing for, just the act of attacking his friend too. That's plausible. It's kind of rude. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah, but I was pretty much finished there. But yeah, I mean, Bingham's going to lean over him, and they're going to have a couple of exchanges. I think interestingly, Hancock isn't really aware of any of this until the next day when it happens, because Hancock is being dragged along these fields as well in an ambulance that we don't know where exactly they went, but they're trying to get Hancock out of here as quickly as possible, not understanding what is going to be going on. So that's the situation with Bingham and Armistead.
Yeah, pretty cool though. All right, that's just amazing. And I'll tell you one more tidbit about that monument. If you look closely at Armistead, at the monument, at the friend to friend monument, they actually have the bullet holes in Armistead. Most people overlook that detail. Right? Oh, you going now, man? I got to go. Oh, we got to go. It's a compliment. All right, so what else is happening? Any questions so far? Let's about face once again. We're not going far, but please watch yourself. The traffic should be coming from your left. Let's go back across the street and let's reassemble on the front line over here. That van is getting in there. So basically what I'm saying is when the Confederates get to here, when they advance to here, that swell, that wood line you see over there, they're out of gas.
Okay.
So that's the story of every Confederate attack. Where was the last division? What if Pickett's division is available behind Wofford's brigade, to clear I'm just getting dreaming here.
Yeah.
But, it's the story of everything is the lack of depth. There's only so much you can take. The brilliant spectacle about General William Barksdale and those Mississippians, and Wilcox for that matter, is the damage they took and still went forward. That's the amazing thing. That's the barometer. I'm not saying it's something you strive for, but in an oxymoron kind of way, if you want a combat unit, you kind of, just, that's what you want, aggressive soldiers that move. And that's what they had. Unfortunately, they've lost all unit cohesion probably by the time that they get there. The gentleman was asking me about the gap in the line and how much time the 1st Minnesota bought by when Hancock sent them the charge is what we're talking about. And I always thought that charge was about 15 minutes. Christopher, do you disagree? Christopher agrees. So let Matt take the hit. So I imagine that I don't know if they could have held. I don't know what would have happened if Willard's New Yorkers hadn't showed up. If they hadn't been there at the right time. I'm taking a deep dive on y'all. But some people attribute, you just have to look it up for yourself, because I'm getting outside of July 3rd. But those New Yorkers are at the right place at the right time, if ever there was one. And a fresh brigade of Union, a big brigade of fresh Union troops against Barksdale's worn out Mississippians, probably out of ammo too. A lot of them. I had one guy, I don't know, I just give you just to show you how people can, sometimes you just never know what walks up to the front desk. I had this guy walk up from Mississippi, and if he's watching this tape, I'm still waiting on you. He came in and told me that he had some of his ancestors' letters from Barksdale's brigade, and he had accounts in there from his ancestor talking about Willard's New Yorkers bayoneting and shooting wounded Confederates while they were on the ground as they went forward. I said, I got to have it. I said, I'll rename the whole park. Right here. We need to put that in the museum over there, And then now he can't find the letters. You have to find the letters. I can't just come out here and repeat stuff like this. I want that. All right. So, yeah, did that answer?
Yes, thank you very much.
Anything else before we get back to the 3rd? I'm going to circle back to the 3rd now. bet he gave you fits. You boy, I bet you inherited everything you did to your parents. I bet you got it twofold back with that one.
I had 5 of them.
Did you?
I was lucky.
Really? Which one was what's he? Middle?
Yeah, he's been
One of them.
He's got 2 older sisters.
Oh, well, he must have been easy after them.
Boys are easier than girls, I'll tell you that.
I asked a guy one time in Vicksburg, he had them all stacked up. I said, tell me the difference between raising boys and girls. This is in Mississippi, of course. He's like, you see that boy right there? I said, yes, sir. I'll whoop him, and he'll take it. Go on. And I'll whoop that girl. She'll tell me about it a month later.
They hang on to stuff.
All right. Hancock's biographer Francis Walker described July 3rd as this way. He said that as soon as the cannonade opened, 1:07 p.m., Hancock mounted his horse and with his staff and his corps flag flying. Corps flag. That would be like a pennant, sort of. I believe we have it.
We do.
We do. Is it still on display? Is it
Sitting in the archives.
Sitting in the archive. Well, heck, when I get back to the office, I'll just take a dolly down there and haul it up to my office. Where'd the second Corps flag go? Does anybody know? I think Matt's got it. It's in his office. Last I saw, he's waving it around. That'll get him out of their chair. All right. He's got his Corps flag flying, and he rode slowly along the front of his line that every man might see that his general was with him in the storm. Only once was the cavalcade interrupted. So furious was the fire that his favorite black charger became unmanageable. That probably happened right here in this area, and Hancock was obliged to dismount and borrow the horse of an aide to complete the circuit of a line. All right? You know, it's nice if you can get a Ferrari, but that's not exactly what you take into the soybean patch. All right? Or at least I wouldn't recommend it. Maybe you do, ma'am. I don't know. Hard to say. When someone pointed out that Hancock was needlessly exposing himself, he responded, quote, I believe this is in the movie, there are many times when a Corps commander's life does not count. Along the ride, he also made time to apologize to several officers he had made harsh remarks to in the past. Perhaps he was feeling his mortality. Now, I don't know of any close calls, and so I won't make up any close calls. But let me tell you something. You know, I get it, you know, him riding on horseback and calming the men. I mean, can you imagine how tense things are right here? I cannot imagine how many shots were taken at him, especially flying that Corps flag, and especially with, you know, orders to fire in this general vicinity. Now, I don't know how many close calls, but I imagine he felt concussions from time to time as he was riding through here. I do not know how somebody does that. That would be like climbing into like a Dunkin' bucket, you know, and talking smack. You know those guys at the carny? That's what I want to do in retirement. You know, get in the cage, tell them to knock me off here, you know what I'm saying? But that's what he's basically doing. To his men, he's saying they can't hit me, and if they can't hit me, they can't hit you. Slowly. Now, go back again. Professional military officer. He knows what's expected. Now, that's easy for me to say. If he'd have got his guts strewed all over across this area, I would be here telling you that's the dumbest thing I ever saw. You know? But since he didn't get killed, I think it's kind of the bravest thing there, you know? So, yeah. He eventually took position with Brooke and his men in front of the Pennsylvania Monument and waited for the bombardment to end. So further south, I'm sure the shelling was a little bit better. The Second Corps veterans would write about this act for decades. Now, Gibbon and Haskell, in my mind, Christopher was pointing out something to me in between stops. In the Joint Committee of the Conduct of the War, I'd never seen this before. Hancock claimed in front of Congress that he was still a wing commander, basically, here. If you want to, Christopher will show you the quote in between stops. Go up and ask him. I've never heard that before, but that's Hancock's verbatim quote. Interesting tidbit. I'll have to look into that later. I always traditionally thought that Meade restored Hancock to Corps Command on the morning of July 3rd, shortly after or around that breakfast that happened with Gibbon and the tough rooster that they had across on the other side of the hill, where I showed you Armistead and Bingham happened. Somewhere in that gully back there, Meade showed up, and they boiled a chicken and plucked it, basically. And you just ain't ever been that hungry. You don't need broth, all that salt and pepper. It's all unnecessary. There's such thing. You go in Disney World, you got some money. I thought that's where Hancock is restored to Corps Command, so I'll keep it with that. So Gibbon is now back to Division Command, and Haskell, which wrote one of the best accounts of the Battle of Gettysburg, if you haven't ever read that, check it out. Frank Haskell. You remember what it's called? Or they named it? It's been reprinted so many times. That is a very good thing. Never around when you need him. Gibbon summoned his horse, but the orderly was literally knocked out of the saddle from a flying shell before the horse could make it to Gibbon. Yeah, you didn't know that one. Therefore, Gibbon and Haskell walked out here to where we are. Gibbon, an old artillerist, noted that the shelling was actually lighter in front of his lines. So out in front of the wall they went, Gibbon and Haskell, asking the boys how they were doing, etc. Now, one of the last ones we got, but the Gibbon wounding tree is still out too. You're going to see that. In case I fail to mention it, we're going to walk right past it on the way down. That's where he's going to be wounded later. Now, also during his ride, remember Hancock, we left Hancock down there at the Pennsylvania Memorial. Also during his ride, Hancock took it upon himself, a lot of you wanted me to talk about this, Hancock took it upon himself to order the artillery to open up. Now here you get into a gray area. And when I mean a gray area, I mean a gray area there, Daniel Boone. The Union Army has a chief of artillery. The Confederate Army has a chief of artillery. It's Pendleton on one side, William Pendleton on one side, and on the Union side, Henry Hunt. Huh? Not to be confused with tomatoes.
Never.
Never. What a dumb statement. How dumb? Of course it's not. All right, Henry Hunt's chief of artillery. Henry Hunt is a staff officer, and Pendleton are staff officers directly under the commanding general. Hunt, though, has his own reserve, and he has a different view of how artillery should be used. And I'm about to present the conundrum to you, and you can make your own decision. I thought that was the best thing about Christopher's first stop. He left it to you to make the decision. He's going to make a great CEO one day. Superintendent, perhaps. Give Matt a promotion. Non-supervisory promotion. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Hancock feels that the artillery here should be firing in order to boost the morale of the Union infantry. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you example A. World War II, amphibious beach landings. What do they always do?
Naval bombardment.
Naval bombardment. Did it work? Most of the time, no. Never worked. But what do World War II veterans say about the bombardment?
They liked it.
They liked it. Why did they like it?
They thought it might be killing the enemy.
That's right. It may not be, but it sure felt like it. You know, how could anybody survive that? That's Hancock's demeanor. He wants to boost his morale. Now, just because they're the Union Army doesn't mean they have an infinite amount of ammunition. They don't. So what do they have? They have finite amount. And so when Hancock orders the guns to open up through here, Henry Hunt, the chief of artillery, has an opposite theory. He feels that if you make the cannons go silent, order the cannons to go silent, it gives the impression to the rebels that the artillery has been suppressed. In other words, you quit firing in order to lure, in this case, lure the enemy out of the wood line so you can more effectively use your rounds. That's Hunt's theory. Now, how do you meld those two together? You don't. And so what you get into is we have children here now, is a peeing contest out here. I don't know if y'all ever had them troughs. I had the troughs when I was in elementary school.
Good old days.
Get up there, yeah, see what you got. All right. I quickly found out what I didn't. All right. So, upon looking south, Hancock saw McGilvery's line of reserve artillery had ceased firing. Why? Because Hunt commands the guns at the Pennsylvania Monument. That's reserve artillery. So he rides down there. He sent the 2nd Corps Artillery Chief John Hazard down there to order them to reopen. Well, John Hazard is in charge of the 2nd Corps Artillery. He's not in charge of the reserve artillery brigades from the Army of the Potomac. So, but I'm not Hazard, and I don't have a guy named Hancock who's probably in a real rage by this time telling me to ride down there and tell him to open back up. I figure I'd just go down there and tell him to open back up. Is what he did. Hazard soon returned with word that the batteries had refused to open because they had orders from Hunt not to. What does Hancock do? He goes down there because there's a problem. And Hancock just rides on down there to see what the problem is because he's Hancock. All right? And so that sets up the scene. The first officer to befall Hancock's wrath was poor Captain Patrick Hart. The captain tried to explain, this is a major general he's talking to. The captain tried to explain what Hunt's orders were, but Hancock promptly reminded him that he controlled the center of this line. Hey, Christopher, that goes to your point. Hancock tells him he controlled the center of the line. Hart was to open at once. Hancock proceeded to tell Thompson and Phillips batteries the same order. By this time, the artillery brigade commander, Freeman McGilvery, rides up. He's in command of all these batteries Hancock is messing with. The infantry corps commander is riding with. And so McGilvery comes riding up and confronts Hancock. Hancock proceeded to tell young Mr. McGilvery that Hunt, quote, had no idea of anything like this when he gave his orders, and that the, unquote, and that the infantry needed the guns to respond in order to bolster morale. McGilvery reminded Hancock he was not under his command. Bet that went over real well. And another thing. All flustered, Hancock rode off. And McGilvery would later write that, quote, Hancock, quote, seemed unnecessarily excited, was unduly empathetic, and there was nothing in sight except puffs of smoke 1,500 and more yards away. His orders would result in a most dangerous and irreparable waste of ammunition. The end result was when the Second Corps guns ran out of ammunition before the assault began, and the reserve artillery was fine. And so I'll leave you with the question I started with: which side do you take in this argument? What does the unicorn say? Okay, so when you hear, ladies and gentlemen, about Confederates talking about crossing the field, and they get to cross about a third of the way over before they reopen, there's a reason. I'm not saying every gun chest, ammunition chest was empty, but I'm telling you they were low on ammunition. And if you're low on ammunition, which would vary from battery to battery, from gun to gun, the closer the enemy gets, the more effective your shots are. That's pretty much true of anything you say in life, right? As far as that goes. Okay, so that's why they wait. McGilvery's line, I would put forth to you, is perfectly sighted because they have the angle on the Confederates coming through here. But, once again, many of those Confederates they can't see for periods of time. And such as Kemper and Garnett, you know, especially Garnett and Armistead, they're shielded somewhat by the Cadore house and the barn and so forth. But nevertheless, they have more ammunition to shoot down the line. Second Corps guns would have plentiful amount of what was called canister. Canister, though, is a short-range round used around 400 yards or less. You could push it out further, but they can't use that until they can use that. So I'm just trying to show you what it looked like as Hancock goes back and forth along the line. Any questions? All right.
Well, here's a quick.
Go ahead.
Were the reports from the Confederate side that there was a decent amount of damage inflicted by those guns that he ordered to go before they ran out?
The only reports that the Confederates have, or the only report, I don't know what hill. This is an interesting question. If you extrapolate it, of course, all of you Gettysburg buffs are instantly going to Alexander, which you well should, because he's in charge of half the bombardment. But it's an interesting question. I sure wish I had some more accounts from the other half of the bombardment. What were they? What were Hill's men? Hill's guns? A.P. Hill. What were they looking at? Now, to answer the gentleman's question, Alexander said that was the barometer, or the, you know, he's the one looking through the binoculars, waiting for a favorable sign to order the Confederate infantry forward. And so he doesn't see anything favorable in answer to your question. This whole ridge we're on is engulfed in white smoke, and it's not moving. And in the midst of this white smoke, right here, south of the copse of trees, all of a sudden through the smoke, Alexander sees some horses come up, and they limber up the cannons and they draw them off. Well, that's the first thing Alexander writes, positive thing that he has seen during the whole bombardment. And he thinks to himself, my God, if they don't replace those guns, this is our chance. He's grasping at straws, people. I'm not telling you it's the pivotal moment, but it's something. And so that's when you get into Alexander sending the notes to Pickett and Pickett going to Longstreet. In the exchange of notes, General, shall I advance? Longstreet knows, going back to the gentleman's original question, Longstreet can fairly well see that the Union artillery is not suppressed. But the Confederate artillery is out of ammunition, and you either call it off or you go. That's all I can tell you. It's D-Day. I mean, there is no in-between here. What are you going to do? There's nothing you can do half-hearted in a combat situation. Answer the question?
Yep, thanks.
Anything else? See, I could answer that rebel question. For all Union questions, we will turn to the most esteemed Christopher right here. Let's walk down a little bit and move a little bit. They making an ask that they damn this thing, they want the same services for less taxes. It's an unmeetable goal. Great. They drink Rome Star. Civil War buff?
Huge.
Good. All right.
Reenactor.
My parents brought me here, ma'am, and high school. I don't know if it's a seminal moment, but they fed my
Passion.
well, they fed my hobby, and now I make a living at a hobby. And how many people?
You can't beat that.
That's amazing.
No, it's like Christopher. He's probably got an IQ of like, oh, what you got over there, Christopher? Well, maybe about 208, something like that. But I think it's high, isn't it?
Yeah, that's pretty high. Yeah.
But,
You told me yesterday you had 210.
well, I'm thinking 209 right now. But you
Good
get
thing
to
I got
this
my boots
point
on.
like where he is. Where are you, a sophomore, junior?
I'll be a junior in September.
You could, somebody bright like that, he could go out and make a mint, or he could, in private world, or he'd come, stand out here in the sun and be happy. It all depends. I hate that. It's so bad they have to, such a shame they have to make that decision so young. I get so many people that come up, when I'm having a bad day, they come up to me and tell me how much they'd like to have my job. And I need to hear that, especially after I've told the 55th person where the bathroom is. With my 2 degrees, 2 bachelors, and a master's.
Ooh.
Yeah, I was ripping off maps yesterday. I said, I'm fully qualified for this. You want to bring the stamps down? I'll lick those too. All right. So let's stop here and let's reiterate. Were we doing a tour? Were you filming all this? Okay. All right.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah. All right. Look at where we are. The one reason I want to stop here is because most people never realize what they're looking at. This is actually original Civil War entrenchments. We always give, and I do. I'm the one guilty of this. I always give the talk about entrenchments over at Culp's Hill. We rarely ever talk about this. This is mostly First Corps troops. Unfortunately, of course, we'd never do this today. I mean that sincerely. But back in the day, they put a hole, when they put this road in here, they basically put a hole through the earthworks. Of course, we'd never do that today. We'd reroute the road. But back then, it wasn't that big a deal, Why would you make a curvy road when you make it straight? All right? And so that's what they did. But this part of the Union line, not up toward 2nd Corps, Cemetery Ridge, Webb's Brigade, Harrow's Brigade up there, but down here toward the south end, they threw in some earthworks. So that's pretty cool. All right, so Hancock is riding down the line. I think he's basically back and forth along the line, but he gets down here to this area. Now, I just stopped here because it's an easy place to stop. But as we go past here, we're going to be marching past how do you say it? Stannard is the way I say it. Stannard. Somebody give me something.
Stannard.
All right. So I'm going to give you the Vermont moment right here. So my boss, because they don't ever give me these tours for a good reason, had to take out the senator from Vermont on a special tour around here, and I'll do my best to do this story. All right, so when you got a VIP like that, who's also, obviously a former presidential candidate, you want to have your stuff together. All right, so he gets out there, and he'd gone and asked somebody that he respected very highly, how do you pronounce Stannard? Is it Stannard or Stannard? And he said he pulled the car around. I don't know if Byrne was in a Cadillac or not. I don't know. But he pulled around to the Vermont marker over here, and he's ready for it. Okay? And so I can't do it very well, but he says, now, Senator, right over here is General Stannard's brigade, all the way from Vermont. No. Stannard. He didn't get that right. Yeah, so it's Stannard. I got it from the top. It's Stannard, all the way from Vermont. Right up here. All right, so Hancock comes riding down through here. Now this is a point of contention, and only with vets would this be a point of contention. But if you're a nobody, colonel, one of 100 and 200 out here on this field. If you get your moment to shine in an army of 95,000 men, you better, by God, do it. Now, I don't know who's correct on this, but it was I need to say this, it was very important to the Vermont soldiers and the people commanding to know that they pushed out on their own initiative. However, I also need to state that Winfield Scott Hancock took full credit for the movement I'm about to describe to you. All right? Now, they took exception to that, but I don't know who's right. At the very least, I can tell you that Hancock was steadfast in saying, well, by God, if I didn't order it, I did think about it. And I did walk down or ride down here to get that accomplished. So I don't know, who's telling the truth. But I'll tell you one of the more unique things that we have, which you don't see often on the Gettysburg battlefield, is when the Confederates are attacking to your right and up toward the copse of trees, the end of the Confederate line we'll say, I'm not saying exact, but let's say it's roughly out in the middle of that field right there. This is one of the few places on the Gettysburg battlefield where advance markers for the troop movements are placed in the middle of the field. I don't know, I'd have to think about that. I mean, there's some other studies, but I don't know if they're exactly done like this. So anyway, the Vermont men would swing out at right angles. So why don't you come up here and be the Vermont man? Okay, so if I'm the Confederates, face me, and he's the Vermont man, go back, swing out on me, go back to the Union line. If I'm coming this way and he's the Vermont man and he swings out, why is that a problem?
It's your flank.
That's right, because he's crossed the T on it. And if, what do you call it, Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett right here, if he's shooting at me, or Jim Bowie, let's make it Jim Bowie. I like Big Nine right there. He dueled in Mississippi out at Natchez.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, on an island. They used to go out in the middle of the Mississippi River. Right. I know I'm getting off topic. They used to go out in the middle of the river where there was no law between Louisiana and Mississippi. And you know how they did it? They tie themselves their wrists together. That's right. You tie your left wrist together and you get that Bowie knife out with your right. How big a man you think you are? Well, you ain't going nowhere.
Especially if you're left-handed.
Yeah, that would be a bummer if it was left-handed. I will grant you that. It'd be over quick.
Yeah.
Anyway, you know what I'm talking about, Jimmy. So, ladies and gentlemen, he swings out and they start shooting this way and you're shooting at me. So what do the Confederates do? They recoil. I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's a right over the top of this yellow grass, there's a dark green spot right over the top of that fence from where I'm standing. That's where the Confederate line is bent back. This is an angle you rarely get to see. I'm just pointing this out because you were kind enough to come walk out in this heat with me today. But the Confederate line actually bends back at right angles. In other words, give me a wide shot again there, Stuff Rider. The Confederates, instead of pushing all the energy into the Alamo right here, they have to bend back their right flank like this at right angles. And so what does that do? It takes away energy from the actual attack. Well, that's the importance of Stannard's movement out into the field. And his movements, you can barely see the top of one. You'll get to see, I think, the other one as we walk down to one of our last stops down here. That's the markers for the Vermont troops as they come out at right angles. Now, let me tell you something else. Now, I don't know, I guess, now I've never heard of this except for Parker's Crossroads. I'll give you Parker's Crossroads. About the time he gets through shooting me up, Christopher over here, I'm not kidding you. I'm gonna back up a little bit. All right, over the hill right here, over here comes two more brigades from Wilcox and Lang. So I come charging up, I come over the hill, the whole party's gone. You don't ever want to be at the party when the party's breaking up. Well, they're here, okay? And so they come over the crest of the hill, and what do the Vermont men do? They turn around and they attack this way. And they ride, yeah. How many times you ever heard of that on a battlefield? And these are 9-month enlistments who were up in, they were up in,
What's the next week or something?
they were extended. They could be extended to a year, I think, couldn't they, or something? They could go to August, and here they are, stuck in the middle with you. Who was that?
Steelers wheel.
Who was?
Steelers wheel.
Is it right? Is it right? Okay. All right. Vermont, you got it. All right. Vermont men come out through here and they're raking them down. Okay, so Hancock is keeps riding down. Other thing as we get going through here, smoke, people. People get on George Pickett. Oh, George Pickett's not up here getting shot. Well, what's George Pickett supposed to do up here? What would he actually do if he rode up here? You think he's going to be like, what is that guy, William Wallace? Or something like that? No, it ain't going to happen. They got guns. These are not knives. These are guns. That'd be dumb. They'd be like, you'd have Vermont sitting here, and they'd be like, Bill, you see that guy? Unbelievable. I think I'm going to shoot his curls off first. Hold my cigarette. Right here. No. Hancock, I think, in part, too, may be trying to see. He can't see. And if you got to put yourself away, just like George Pickett. You got to sometimes, it's a better view the further you get away than actually being up there. Put your own life in there, Yeah, that's one thing. Any questions?
Matt, I have a question
Matt.
about Hancock's responsibilities from being appointed a wing commander, 2nd Corps commander, 3rd Corps commander. Does he revert back from 3rd to 2nd?
Read him go ahead, Christopher. Read her the quote. Just go.
It just sounds like he has a lot of different
look, let me preface this by saying that I have never heard this quote before today. I do not doubt the veracity of the quote, but I've never seen anybody use it before. So go ahead.
So just for also kind of a primer, I pulled this from the Joint Committee on the Conduct of War when they're going and they are kind of attacking George Meade. Hancock states that on the morning of July 3rd, that he had command of the left center connecting Cemetery Hill to Little Round Top. That line consisted of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Corps, of which I had the general command. I commanded that whole front. General Gibbon commanded the 2nd Corps in my absence, General Newton the 1st, and General Birney the 3rd. Now I will say that there is no possible way he had command of the entire 1st Corps because Wadsworth's sitting on Culp's Hill. And that is completely out of his purview. So...
What does he have here, though?
2nd and 3rd.
No, what does he have? He has 2 regiments. I'm getting real trivia with you. But we're right here. He's got 2 regiments from 1st Corps.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There you go. Right on. Read it to him, ma'am. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, in terms of his responsibility, that kind of goes back to the whole thing with Henry Hunt. If you're a wing commander, what do you have control of? Hancock says, I have control of this entire line. Hunt says, you have control of the infantry on this line. Who's right, who's wrong, we don't really know. At the end of the day, the Union beat back Pickett's charge, so it doesn't really end up happening. The one thing I will say is that when Hancock goes into his testimony, he is defending George Meade, and that is his stance throughout the entire thing. As we kind of explored today, Meade is giving Hancock a ton of responsibility, and Hancock is probably pretty happy with that responsibility, so he's not going to start throwing Meade under the bus about, oh, well, he should have done this different, he should have done this different. They had that Council of War. Hancock said that we should stay here. Hancock also said that we should attack after Pickett's charge. So how much he had control over, it's unknown, but I would say that he had control of definitely the troops from Ziegler's Grove down to about the Vermont Brigade.
So when he is asked to take over 3rd Corps, he relinquishes command of 2nd Corps to Gibbon.
Yes.
And then does he reassume? That's what I think. That's
So,
where I'm a little
again-
confused. Because does he stay as third corps? Because you don't. Until
So this
his
is the
wounding
thing
and-
that I was talking to one gentleman while we were walking over here. There's never a written order that says any of this.
Okay.
So it's a verbal order that puts Hancock in command of the 3rd Corps. He gives command to the 2nd on July 2nd. When they go to the Council of War, Gibbon is present, which would, maybe one could assume, means that Gibbon's in command of the 2nd Corps, Hancock speaking on behalf of the 3rd. But why would Birney be there as well, who's also a 3rd Corps division commander? It kind of gets into like semantics about like, well, who's in charge of this, who's in charge of that. I mean, I would say that Gibbon has a point in the Council of War where he says that Birney was upset with Meade, and Meade said, Hancock is now your commanding officer. Now, that is Gibbon writing after the war, some 20 years later. Who knows if his testimony or his account is fully accurate. But by that, you would say that 3rd Corps is under Hancock still. And that would, again, promote his wing commander idea. But
I suppose it all becomes moot once
It all
Hancock is
becomes
removed
moot.
from
Yep.
the field because
Yeah.
now Sickles has been removed and now Hancock's
The,
been removed.
the other, besides the paper trail, the other, you know, parallel evidence is there, and they're not trying to prove the point of who's commanding. They're just relating what happened. But at that rooster dinner I told y'all, that rooster that was killed without due process of law, according to Gibbon right there. They put him in that pot on the other side. Well, they soon had Newton. I'm taking a deep dive. Not Isaac, but the other dude. All right. They soon had General Newton, Pleasanton, and Meade, and some of their staff join them over there. Anyway, the point is, Newton is recorded. Why would they say this? Newton is recorded as kidding Gibbon about putting on airs with this cook rooster because he was now the 2nd Corps commander. So that leads, or at least leads some to believe, well, I don't think we're going to get a definitive answer here for you. That would lead me to believe that Hancock, it may go to the veracity of what Christopher's saying, but according to this account, Meade subsequently, shortly after this, puts Hancock back in charge of the 2nd Corps. So, you know, you got 2 regiments from the 1st Corps. I can explain that. He might have seen a 1st Corps flag or something like that. And, you know, I don't know.
can I add one thing, Matt?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the most important thing, especially when talking about Hancock, is when he arrives places, you're gonna know it. You know, he's known as this, like, he's famous in the Army of the Potomac as a very prolific swearer. He curses all the time. So much so that it annoys chaplains in his own corps that he curses so much. They think it brings down the morality of the men. What you deal with every day, man? Buses?
I get more ways with the flat hat. I don't wear the flat hat too much because it makes me look like a giant thumbtack. With a Yosemite Sam with the thumbtack on his head. Thank you, ma'am. That may be the greatest laugh I get from you today. Thank you. Texas didn't appreciate it.
Just to finish what I was saying here, he's a major general. When he arrives, and you have a Vermont brigade like this, they're 9-monthers. They're trying to do whatever they can. And you have a major general who's probably cursing you out and cursing out whatever's going on out here. You're probably gonna want to follow whatever he says, even if it's just like, yeah, okay, just get away from me, kind of. Or if it's, we understand that what he's saying to us. So I talked about in the beginning, his just sheer presence alone kind of carries through with him, not through this battle, but through everywhere he goes. And I think that also goes into how some of these men are being led as well.
Just giving you an example, just to postmark his things. I hate to say this, but look, when General Grant takes over in '64, when you need heavy lifting, when you need an absolute attack, and you want it done, who do you call? You call the 2nd. You call the 2nd Corps, the Ghostbusters, right? So, that comes with a cost. the more you use something, the more it gets worn. That's true of anything. I don't care if it's what it's made out of, it will wear, you know. I mean, it's the way it is. So by the time they get to Petersburg, by the end of the Overland campaign, the Second Corps is a shell of itself.
That's why they had to consolidate all the corps into fewer corps.
They also too, not to get into this study, but it's sort of parallel since we're talking about Corps Command. They also, as an aside, they made sure when they reorganized the corporation here that Dan Sickles' position was eliminated. In other words,
Exactly.
when he was well, he returned back to a position that no longer existed.
And they made sure it didn't exist.
They made sure it didn't exist. Yes, sir. Sure did. Anything else?
When was that commission going on?
I thought it was in the winter. I thought it was in the late winter of '64.
Yeah. We have a date here. March.
It went on for months.
Yeah.
Yeah. He gave his on March 22nd, 1864, right when he was coming back from his wounding.
And wasn't that? Do you think that was more about trying to get at Meade because he didn't follow up after the battle to crush the army?
So I mean, yeah, just to kind of not go too much into it, but Sickles, Butterfield, and who's the third one? Doubleday. They kind of have this vendetta against Meade about the battle here because they are all kind of shoved under the rug while people like Hancock are given a lot of responsibility. And so they kind of go to their political friends, right? Sickles is very well connected, and he goes and he says, you need to double check on Meade because he wanted to retreat. And so then Hancock and other people were brought in to say, no, we didn't want to retreat. We were fighting here. And they all have to give their testimonies on their account of the battle. And it's from that account that I pulled that quote from him.
Yeah. So it's a vendetta by the Republicans. It's radical Republicans.
Sickles is Democrat.
Well, yeah. I mean, they're
It's a mess.
It's just politicians.
Being politicians.
Yeah.
I feel sorry. Well, let me just say my piece. I feel sorry for me.
Oh yeah, he gets the short end.
He gets the short end, and he didn't deserve that. He's in an unwinnable position here. He's thrust into a position where he has nothing to win and everything to lose, right? And then he, you know, he gets back to Washington, and they're piling on him. He doesn't even know. First, he doesn't even know what's happening. I would be curious to know, though, not that this has anything to do, excuse me, with what Hancock's quote about what he commanded, but I would point out to you, if you're going to read that testimony, you probably see the testimony change dramatically after those general officers find out what they're being subpoenaed for. In other words, they come in there prepared, but you have to be guarded with what they have because you have two sides to this. You have the Hooker camp and you have the Meade camp. And apparently Hooker still has a lot of friends in Congress. Or maybe he doesn't have friends in Congress. Maybe they just don't like Lincoln. Maybe it's the same thing. I don't know. But nothing changed. Let's walk on down a little bit. Here comes that Georgia man back here. He's still optimistic. That's all right. We got a new defensive line. We're not being pushed around this year. Yeah, we'll see about that. I'll tell you what, we ain't playing no Battle Hymn Republic over in Mississippi. SEC, man. SEC. It's all way. You Texas or A&M?
I'm in high school.
Oh, who you root for?
Baylor?
Don't say Alabama. Yeah.
Well. Okay. So let's reiterate a little bit. I got a little bit more detail on set up Hancock in the last stop here. So I was telling you at the last stop about Hancock riding out and getting the Vermont men going. Now this is Hancock's version. Hancock rode up to Colonel Randall, commanding the 13th Vermont, and a Vermont officer recalled, quote, "The din of artillery and musketry was deafening at the time, and I did not hear the words that passed between the two men. But my eyes were upon Hancock's striking figure. I thought him the most magnificent in the flush and excitement of battle. When he uttered an exclamation and I saw that he was reeling in the saddle. A ball had gone through the pommel. That's ball right there. That's 3 syllables. Ball for y'all practicing at home. Right there. Okay. Your phonetics. A ball went through the pommel of his saddle and into his groin. Growing. Growin. Growing. All right. And I don't know what you're doing at the house, but that's gotta hurt. Oh, huh. All the guys, you can't see it, but all the guys are crossing their legs behind the camera right now. What's happening? They dancing, they pacing back and forth. One of them's doing this, he's rocking right now. Right here. Can't keep himself still when I'm telling this story. Okay, so he's reeling in the saddle and he gets hit in the groin. The 3 officers from the 13th Vermont, Lieutenant Sidney Murray of the 13th and Lieutenants Hooker and Benedict of the 12th Vermont, assisted Hancock from the saddle, but he insisted on staying on the field until the fighting ended. Lieutenant Benedict recalled that General Stannard opened Hancock's clothing, quote, where he indicated by a movement of his hand that he was hurt. A ragged hole 1 inch or more in diameter from which the blood was pouring profusely was disclosed in the upper part and on the side of his thigh. He was naturally in some alarm for his life. "Don't let me bleed to death. Don't let me bleed to death," he said. "Get something around it quick." He's human, you know, because Stannard had whipped out his handkerchief, and as I helped to pass it around General Hancock's legs, I saw that the blood, this taught me something, being of a dark color and not coming in jets.
Just a vein injury.
Could be a what?
A vein injury.
A vein injury.
Wasn't the artery.
It could not be from an artery, and I said to him, "This is not arterial blood, General. You will not bleed to death." For my use of a surgical term, he took me for a surgeon and replied with a sigh of relief, "That's good. Thank you for that, doctor." We tightened the ligature by twisting it with the barrel of a pistol and soon stopped the flow of blood. While lying there, Colonel Wheelock Vesey, an old friend and now commanding the 16th Vermont, passed by. Hancock called to him and grasping his hand, stated, "Go in, Colonel, and give it to them on the flank." All right, you want to, in a second, I'm going to give you a second to think about it. The spot. You want to talk about the spot and the thing? Okay. So what's ended up happening is Hancock is laying out here on this field, and in the midst of all this, what he's looking at as he lays upon the field is to your right or back behind you, is he sees hundreds of Confederates retreating across this field. I mean, if you think of the all-time commanders that are remembered throughout world history, if they die, when do they want to die? They want to die on the battlefield with victory in hand. I mean, you can't get a better story than that. And Hancock has been wounded right here, but in his pain, he is seeing his enemy vanquished and retreating across the field. Now, back at this site, Hancock lay down and Corps Surgeon Alexander M. Doherty administered aid to the general. Hancock sent an aide to Meade with news of the victory. Upon receiving the message, Meade told the aide to thank Hancock, quote, "for the country and for myself and for the service that he has rendered today." Back at this site, Captain Bingham, y'all remember Captain Bingham from Armistead? He joined Hancock here, and his brother John arrived a few minutes later. Dr. Doherty probed the wound with his finger and removed a 10-penny nail and bits and pieces of wood out of that hole in his groin. All right? He then staunched the flow of blood and was relieved to find the bullet had narrowly missed the femoral artery. Getting there. He eating carrots now. An ambulance was brought up and they placed the wounded general inside. On the way to the rear, he made the ambulance stop and then dictated a message urging Meade to advance the 5th and 6th Corps in counterattack. This is a man who's, can you imagine the adrenaline going through him? Who pulls the ambulance over to dictate a message that we ought to go whoop them right now? I like that. In excruciating pain, Hancock made his way to the 2nd Corps Hospital and then makes his way by train back to Philadelphia. After about a month in the city, he removed himself from the heat of the place and moved to his father's house in Norristown. And I went out of my way when I first did this ago. I think it was 2017. I had a nice lady come all the way over from Philadelphia, or excuse me, from Norristown, to assure me that in 2017 that Philadelphia and Norristown are two separate entities. So ever since, every time I've done this program, I just want you to know, I know the difference between Philadelphia and Norristown, and he went to Norristown. I learned my lesson. The wound would not heal, though. Where's the wound, people? Growing. Doctor after doctor looked at the wound, probed the wound. Can you imagine how many times he had to pull his pants off? You know? As my friend Scotty once told me at MD Anderson, he goes, Matt, the hospital is no place for modesty. He could smoke back. All right. One day in August of '63, a regular Army doctor named Dr. Lewis Reed, that's R-E-A-D, came to visit. He was shocked to find Hancock pale and emaciated. Hancock spoke to him about his impending death. Reed was about to leave when Hancock said, "See, doctor, why don't you try to get this ball out? I have had all the reputation in the country at it. And now let's have some of the practical." I like that. Reed noted that Hancock had always had his wound probed lying down with his leg at a right angle. Reed thought that if he could get Hancock's leg in a straight position, instead, the same position he had been shot in, he's probably standing in the saddle, something like that, then the ball might be found. Practical. Prayers. All right, if you can imagine this, Dr. Reed takes a chair, puts it, that's even worse than the MLB All-Star game last night. I thought I'd heard everything till that national anthem came on, but I tell you, I mean, they may even be worse. I don't even know. That's so bad she had to go to rehab. That's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad.
She'll find plenty of people in there that will mess up the Star Spangled Banner, I guarantee. Anyway, the doctor had a chair, like a kitchen chair, placed on a table. Now I want you to picture this for a minute. He took a chair, he put it on top of the table, and he told Hancock take his breeches off. And that's what he exactly said, but if he was in the South, that's what he would have said to him. I want you to take your breeches off. Hancock takes his breeches off and he climbs up on the dining room table. If you can imagine such a thing. And he sits down in that chair on the dining room table. Well, it's going to look a little awkward, but that's the way it goes, right? So what is the doctor trying to do? He is trying to replicate the same angle that Hancock was wounded on. So when you sit in the chair and somebody probes into your groin right there, he found the ball. Now,
I'm no medical expert, and I'm definitely not, if I'm not today, I certainly am not on 19th century. I have to assume Hancock was conscious. God dang. Wow. I cannot imagine what that felt like. Can you imagine somebody pulling a lead ball out of your leg? His growing. Right.
Exactly.
His transmission wasn't working.
He wasn't a Bronco.
And it wasn't a Bronco. Okay, here you go. The probe, Reed wrote, dropped fully 8 inches into the channel and struck the ball which was embedded in the sharp bone which you sit upon. Right there. He then extracted the ball and Hancock began to heal, but he would never be the same again. Small pieces of bone would continue to come out of the wound, and riding a horse only exacerbated that. During the Overland campaign, Hancock was most of the time confined to an ambulance, which is basically a wagon with a bench in it.
Yeah.
Right there. That should give you an idea. Okay, let's take a brief aside here. I'm going to roll back the clock to July 3rd of 1863. And Christopher is going to come up here and he's going to tell you about why we're standing here right now in this curious little piece of granite which we have in front of us.
Well, so we're not going back to July 3rd. We're going after the war here.
Okay.
But so Hancock came back to Gettysburg many, many times. He often called this his battlefield here. And there was one time where he was taken to this monument back here, which is the Hancock Wounding Monument. And he was with a giant group of people, and he said, I was not wounded here. He conferred with all these people. His staff said, yes, General, you were wounded here. We know, we have, we remember the battlefield. And he conceded to them and saying, well, I wasn't really paying attention. I was looking at the sky. So that's the story about why this monument is here. And we don't know 100% if that's the exact spot, but again, it kind of gives you a taste of where he was. So it was somewhere around here.
Yeah. Now, won't you, in the post-war years, what does Hancock do?
So in 1867, Hancock is promoted to Major General, and that is when none other than William T. Sherman specifically requests for Hancock to be brought out west. And it's here he's going to go out to the Kansas territory, I believe, and he's going to be immediately confronted with an ever-growing problem between the Cheyenne and the Sioux. Hancock had never been fighting in the West except for a brief stint way before, right as he came out of West Point. And it was at that time where he was just in the quartermaster department. So he wasn't really fighting the Native Americans out there. And so when he gets there, he kind of has this really big bravado. We've been talking about his personality, and he takes that to the Native chiefs. And when he goes out there, he wants all of them to sign this warrant saying they won't attack anyone in these new treaties. Well, they don't like that, and so they don't show up to this meeting. Hancock is furious, so he takes all of his command out there, including Custer, who's under his command, and they're going to go out. And when they go out there, they find the village. And when they find the village, all of the native warriors come out. They start trying to, present a screen, and the village disappears and goes away. Hancock sees this as a giant act of cowardice, and more importantly, an act of war. And as such, he's going to kind of unofficially declare war on the Cheyenne and the Sioux in what is now known as Hancock's War. And it does not go very well for him. He's constantly fighting these fort battles that he's not aware of. He can't find villages. He can't do a lot of different things. And it's here that a giant piece of bone is going to come out of his wound, and that's going to give him a lot of kind of immediate pain relief and a little bit more permanent pain relief. But at the time, he was pretty much confined to wherever he was for about a week, recovering and allowing his wound to heal from that moment. It's here that the federal government decided that Hancock wasn't doing a good enough job in the West. So they send out Phil Sheridan, and we all know what happens with Sheridan when he goes out west. And Hancock is right before him. He's going to be appointed to a Reconstruction commander of Louisiana, and he does a lot of very controversial policies. Hancock is a longtime Democrat. He said once that, quote, "My politics are of a practical kind. The integrity of the Constitution and the and the peace of the Union. And so that kind of gives you this idea of who Hancock was as a political-minded man, but he was willing to do all of these things during the Civil War because the Union was more important to him. But now that the Union's together, he kind of sparred with many radical Republican commanders who wanted these policies implemented throughout the South. As such, he is going to be withdrawn from this post by Grant, and he's going to be sent back out west. This time, Hancock has learned from his mistakes. He's understood that you have to kind of reason with the native chiefs much more than just bluntly attack them. And as such, while he's there from 1869 to 1872, he is going to have really actually quite peaceful relations with those there, and he's actually going to sponsor and provide the guard for the people who are going to navigate Yellowstone. And as such, there's a monument in Yellowstone, or a mountain, called Mount Hancock, named in his honor because of the guard that he provided. It's here in 1872 that George Meade dies, and now Hancock supersedes him as the highest ranking major general in the Army. As such, he's brought back east, where he takes command of the Department of the Atlantic, in a role that he would have until he dies later. You can talk about his presidential.
Okay. Oh, come on, round of applause for this. You can't get any better than this. Flawless. I'm going to have to go back to the office and tell my boss he ain't coming out no more.
We need somebody dumber.
Well,
Excellent job.
yes, very excellent job. Real briefly, couple of sides. You could do the whole program on his post-war. Hancock's actually in charge of hanging the Lincoln conspirators.
That's right.
Many people forget that. Did he have a choice? No, he did not have a choice. He said that, later writing, every soldier was bound to act as I did under similar circumstances. There's a lot of people that had a problem with hanging a lady. I don't care what she did, and we can debate her innocence or not, but in 19th century, they didn't like hanging a lady, among others. So anyway, in 1880, Hancock was nominated by the Democratic Party to run against
Garfield.
James A. Garfield. By God, you know it. I went over to Garfield House over there in Ohio. That turned out pretty good. I'm just going to stay out of Ohio. Hancock could count on the solid South, but he needed a few northern states to push him to victory. In the end, he only carried New Jersey in the north. Although, listen to people getting all irate today, all right? Although he lost the popular vote by 39,000. Wow. But only gained one electoral state right there. The electoral vote was not close. Well, he gained more than that. 214 for Garfield and 155 for Hancock. In true Hancock fashion, he took the defeat in stride. And you know what he did? He attended the inauguration. Because that's classy, you know, when you show up. On November 19th and 20th, 1885, Hancock returned to Gettysburg for the last time. 1885, that would be 22 years roughly after that, after the battle. This was 3 months before his death. He visited this spot, but the gap in time since the battle made him state that he did not remember this as being the correct location. When Hancock passed, the nation mourned. Former President Rutherford Hayes wrote, "If when we make up our estimate of a public man, conspicuous both as a soldier and in civil life, we are to think first and chiefly of his manhood, his integrity, his purity, his singleness of purpose, and his unselfish devotion to duty. We can say truthfully of Hancock that he was through and through pure gold." Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know who was more pure gold today. Was it Winfield Scott Hancock or Christopher Busby? Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. Here it goes. Yes.